Imagine spending years dreaming of becoming a parent. And finally, the miracle happens. A baby is born. But then, you discover the child you love was never yours to begin with. This is the story of David and Jessica, an event that took place in 2020 with all names and institutions changed to protect privacy and legal rights. For nearly a decade, David and Jessica lived with a dream they could never touch. Every birthday, every holiday, was a painful reminder of the child they did not have. Friends celebrated new lives, siblings welcomed babies of their own, and David and Jessica smiled on the outside while silently breaking on the inside. They tried everything: doctors, treatments, lifestyle changes, but nothing worked. Each month ended in heartbreak, and so, with both hope and fear in their hearts, they turned to science. In vitro fertilization, IVF, the last step in a journey that had already cost them so much. One autumn morning, in the city of Brisbane, Australia, David held Jessica's hand as they walked into a modern clinic. The building smelled faintly of disinfectant. The white walls felt both sterile and promising. They sat in the waiting room surrounded by couples just like them, strangers, yet bound by the same longing. When their names were called, they rose together. This, they believed, was the moment their lives would finally change. Weeks later, the phone call came. Jessica held the receiver to her ear, her hands shaking. The nurse's words echoed in her head. "Congratulations, you're pregnant." Jessica dropped to her knees in tears, and David caught her in his arms. For the first time in years, they cried tears of joy. From that moment, their lives transformed. Jessica began keeping a journal of every craving, every appointment, every kick she felt inside her. David painted the nursery himself, choosing a soft shade of blue. They bought tiny socks, storybooks, and a mobile to hang above the crib. At night, Jessica rested her head on David's chest, and they whispered about the baby's future. Would it be a boy or a girl? Would it have David's smile or Jessica's eyes? Hope filled every corner of their home. Neither of them could have imagined that the child growing inside Jessica did not belong to them at all. 9 long months passed. Labor began at dawn, the air heavy with tension. Doctors rushed, nurses whispered, machines beeped. And then, a cry filled the delivery room. A baby boy, healthy, strong. David held him, tears streaming down his face. Jessica looked on, exhausted but glowing, as she whispered, "We did it." Family and friends visited, bringing flowers and balloons. The house filled with laughter and gifts. But slowly, cracks began to appear. When Jessica's mother held the baby, she tilted her head in confusion. "He doesn't look much like you," she said gently. David laughed it off. But when strangers made the same comment, doubt began to sink in. At night, David stared at the baby sleeping in the crib. The curve of his nose, the shape of his eyes. None of it seemed familiar. Jessica noticed too. She wanted to dismiss it. But deep inside, something felt wrong. Weeks turned into months. The comments, the doubts, became unbearable. Finally, David suggested what neither of them wanted to admit: a DNA test. They ordered the kit in silence. Jessica swabbed the baby's cheek, her hands trembling. They mailed it away and waited. Each day felt endless. Each night was filled with fear. When the envelope finally arrived, it felt heavier than it should. Jessica sat at the kitchen table, the baby asleep in the other room. David held her hand as she tore it open. The words were clear. The baby carried no genetic connection to them. Not to Jessica, not to David. The silence that followed was louder than any scream. Jessica dropped the paper. covering her face in her hands. David stared at the floor, his world collapsing around him. The truth shattered more than just one family. News of the mistake spread across Brisbane, across Australia, and beyond. Headlines called it the IVF nightmare. Reporters camped outside the clinic. Protesters demanded accountability. The clinic faced lawsuits, investigations, and public outrage. Two families were forever linked by a single human error: one baby, two mothers, two fathers, and a lifetime of questions with no simple answers. For David and Jessica, parenthood was no longer simple. It was not just about blood, it was about love, sacrifice, and heartbreak. In the quiet of their home, David whispered the question they could never escape. What does it mean to be a parent when the child you love is not your own by blood